I was working at a nuclear power plant. That change itself creates the same phenomena in the brain as meeting a bear in the woods. I spent some time at the EPA, and the head of EPA decided to publish it as an official government policy document called the 7 Cardinal Rules of Risk Communication. I like the message map. It addresses one of the most fundamental problems in risk communication, which is what I just mentioned. When people are stressed, upset, angry, concerned, worried because of a threat to that which they value, health, safety, reputation would be, you can expect they're going to have difficulty processing information. The brain changes the way it perceives information in a high stress situation. When you put at risk something that I value, my health, my safety, my economic well-being, etc. It's going back to what's the whole purpose of risk, crisis, high stress communication. So when I did my work on Fukushima, I found one press release from the Japanese government where 6 terms were used for the units that describe radiation. Name at least 3 of the, you know how much I like the number 3, which is the magical number in risk communication. Name at least 3 factors other than numbers which affect people's perceptions of harm, perceptions of concern, perceptions of worry, or more generally, perceptions of risk. The brain gets hijacked in a high stress situation. As much as 80% of information can be lost or more by the strong emotions engendered by a perceived high risk, by a crisis or high stress situation. There's 7 basic emotions you can express, 47 supposedly sub-emotions. Once you have a formed message map, it's ultimately transformable into other formats for communication. Or 1 penny in $10 million, or 1 inch in 16,000 miles. You have to get into the shoes of the other, empathy skills. This was the radioactive pool of the nuclear power plant. It was leaking. One of the most successful crisis communications in American history was the pandemic influenza campaign. That was 2009. It's an echo of the 27-9-3 principle, which in turn is an echo of keep it short and simple, which in turn is an echo of when people are stressed, they have difficulty processing information. You'll often hear about pre-crisis communication, which effectively is risk communication. People want to know that you care before they care what you know. What undermined the response of the BP organization in the Deepwater Horizon case was that when asked about the spill, one of the largest spills in world history, it's more than just the psychology, the psychometrics of how people perceive risk, that actual changes take place in how the brain processes information under conditions of high stress. I think one of the most fascinating cases, crisis communications I've ever seen, was the Maple Leaf products. That we tend to focus more on negatives and positives. The word crisis comes from the Old French or Old English, meaning a turning point in a disease. That was the original definition of the word crisis, is that a crisis is typically dealing with a low probability but high consequence event. It's very different to be in the midst of a crisis itself when all hell is breaking loose. Hurricane, active shooter, explosion, accident, etc. Malaria, yellow fever, dengue, chikungunya, West Nile virus. I could keep going on along the list, each of them carrying a horrendous set of consequences for getting infected. In terms of trust, goal 1, informing decision-making, goal 2, having a constructive conversation or dialogue, goal 3. And that first case study I thought was one of the most fascinating I ever worked on. So why would you want to, it's a model called tell me more, tell me again. My concern, largely driving my career, has been public health concerns. A principle called primacy recency. People tend to focus most on what they hear or what you say first and last. Primacy recency. 1 part per trillion is the mathematical equivalent of 1 second in 320 centuries. Let me throw one more in, another level filter through which information goes. Again, let me educate and explain to you.